Hello, welcome to week 4 of this educational series. This week we are covering attachment, and we're going to do just a brief introduction to adverse childhood experiences. If you have not been able to watch weeks 1 through 3, we did already cover postpartum physical health recovery, postpartum mental health, and NICU care. All of those materials are accessible on our website, which I will have linked at the end of this presentation. If you don't know me, my name is Grace. I'm a third-year occupational therapy student at the University of South Dakota. This educational series is being provided as part of my capstone project that gets me to graduation in May. I myself am a mom to a 1-year-old. And occupational therapy focuses on occupations. Occupations are things that we want or need to do in a day that occupy our time and that are meaningful to us. Some of my favorite occupations are playing with my daughter, going on walks during sunset, and binge watching TV shows with my husband. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, this pre-survey is still open, and I would greatly appreciate anybody who chooses to take it. It is anonymous, and it just aims to provide me more information on how effective this session was and how I can provide education a little bit better than I am. These are the topics that we're going to talk about today, and we're going to jump right into talking about what attachment is. So attachment is the emotional connection, and really this can be a connection between any two people, but for our context, we're going to talk about that connection between a child and their parent. But this connection has the purpose of making a child feel safe, secure, and protected. This process begins before a baby is even born, and it continues to build exponentially until about 3 years old. At the 3-year-old mark, attachment is generally pretty solidified, but it still can change throughout the rest of a child's life. Attachment is important because the disruption of this bond can affect a child emotionally all the way into adulthood. Attachment typically develops in stages. It begins before birth, and during this antenatal time, it becomes stronger when a parent talks, sings, or touches mom's belly. The birth to 6-week time frame is typically considered the pre-attachment stage. At this stage, baby will not show preference for one caregiver over another, and parents want to just continue to respond to their baby's needs in a gentle and consistent way. The 6-week to 7-month time frame is when baby will start to show preference for familiar people, but really will accept care from anyone. The 7-month to 24-month time is when preference for a primary caregiver is at its highest. Baby will turn to that caregiver in times of stress, and separation anxiety is very common during this stage. And then finally, that 24-month and older time is when independence begins to increase, and children will start forming strong relationships with other family members or other people who aren't their primary caregiver. This could be cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, teachers, if that's relevant in your situation. When we talk about attachment, a lot of times you hear about what's called the strange situation, and this is one of the most popular studies about child attachment. It was developed by Mary Ainsworth in the 1970s, and it looks at evaluating patterns of attachment for children that were between the ages of 9 and 18 months. It involved a mother and her baby playing in an unfamiliar room when they're briefly separated, and baby typically remains in the room with a stranger. The observers would watch to see how baby responds when their mother leaves the room, how they interact with the stranger, and how they interact with their mother when the mother returns. This experiment helped identify the different attachment styles that we still reference today, and it showed how these children use their caregivers for comfort and safety, depending on their attachment style. So the attachment styles that we're going to talk about today that were really developed from this experiment there are 4 of them, and one of them is considered to be secure, while the other 3 are considered to be insecure. These styles show us how a parent's responsiveness towards their child's needs then determine their child's behavior back to them. So the attachment styles that we develop in our childhood typically become our adult relational styles, and it's how we form relationships as adults. So the first of the four is secure attachment. This is the result of a caregiver consistently and emotionally responding to their child's needs. This responsiveness teaches children that the world is safe and that people can be trusted. With these children, we generally see a desire to be in close proximity to their caregiver. They'll seek comfort from their caregiver when they're scared or upset, and they will show significant distress when their caregiver leaves. This attachment style is considered to be the most ideal as it promotes emotional intelligence, positive social skills, and robust mental health. We're going to watch just a brief snippet of the strange situation experiment that demonstrates secure attachment.
I have a 134 IQ. I make less money than friends who barely passed high school. Here's what I
So we see in this video that when mom leaves, baby becomes very distressed. And when the stranger comes in, the stranger's trying to soothe the baby, and the baby is having no part in that. You can see where that preference for the primary caregiver is really, really strong. And then when mom returns, we see baby reach for mom. So they're seeking that close proximity. And then mom is able to quickly soothe baby and be able to sit on the floor and engage with baby back into toys. So that would be our secure attachment. The next style that we're talking about is avoidant. This is the result of when a caregiver does not respond to their child's needs in an emotionally nurturing way. So while they may be consistent to responding to their child's needs, they may do so in a way that is not gentle or nurturing. This causes this child to be less likely to seek comfort from their caregiver, and this may present as self-sufficiency. These children generally attempt to manage their own distress, resulting in them avoiding their caregiver, thus indicated by the term avoidant attachment. This style is one of the three insecure attachments, and it typically results in difficulty building long-lasting relationships due to an avoidance of intimacy and hyper-independence. So we are going to watch the brief snippet for this attachment style in the stranger situation video. So in this video clip, when that video started, baby was already in the room without mom, and there was no sign of distress. So baby is not distressed that their mom left. And the stranger comes in, and baby isn't distressed that there's a stranger. They kind of engage with that stranger. And then when mom returns, again, baby's not crying. But what we do notice is baby's sitting on the floor. Mom is trying to talk to baby, and baby has her head turned away from mom. That's that avoidance of that primary caregiver as a result of this attachment style. The third attachment style is ambivalent attachment. With this style, caregivers generally respond inconsistently to their child's needs. So, for example, they may ignore their child's cries. This results in a child developing a fear of abandonment. When their caregiver leaves, they become extremely distressed. And at this point, they're nearly inconsolable when their parent returns. These children are generally pretty difficult to soothe. They'll limit exploration of their environment because there's that fear that their parent's going to leave and not come back. And a lot of times they may demonstrate anger towards their caregiver when they do return through actions such as hitting, pulling hair. This attachment style can lead to decreased social skills and difficulty with emotional regulation. We're going to watch the strange situation video for this attachment style. So in this video, we see that when mom gets up to leave the first time, baby just starts melting down. And when the stranger comes in, they really have to try hard to soothe that baby. He does eventually calm down. And when mom returns and the stranger leaves, he begins melting down again and is crying very hard. You can notice that mom is not um, comforting baby. So there's that inconsistent kind of response to their needs. Baby showing that he's upset, and instead of going and holding baby and being consistent with the way that she soothes, instead she tries to distract with the toys. So that's where we start to see that ambivalent attachment. The final attachment style that we're going to talk about is disorganized. This style develops when a caregiver, who is a child's primary source of safety, becomes a source of fear. This is generally linked to childhood trauma or abuse, and these children will then develop inconsistent behaviors toward their caregivers. So When they're upset, they might reach for their caregiver, but when caregiver picks them up, they might push them away or turn away from them. This attachment style leads to difficulty maintaining relationships with others due to a fear of intimacy and significant distrust in relationships. So, what can you do as a primary caregiver to promote secure attachment for your child? The first would be showing sensitivity and empathy. Your words and your body language help build trust with your child. So use a gentle tone of voice when talking to your baby, and when picking them up, do so gently. And when they're really little, be sure to support their entire body, including behind their head and under their bottom, to promote feelings of safety. The second is respond calmly. Children learn through observation of others, so try to model positive emotional regulation during challenging times. The third is be involved. Interact, be present, and positively engage with your child. Try your best to ensure you're making eye contact with your baby and regularly cuddling with them. And finally, be consistent. Respond to your baby's cries in a predictable and consistent manner. These aspects can teach a child to trust you, and you will become their secure base from where they seek comfort. Research shows that attachment between a child and their mother differs from their attachment with their father. Generally, children seek out their mom for comfort, emotional regulation, and security. Mothers can use this to help build their attachment by providing comfort in times of distress and being very nurturing towards their child. Fathers, on the other hand, typically build their attachment with their children through active physical play. So a baby bonds best with their dad when they're chasing them or tickling them and roughhousing with them. Each parent is equally as important for building attachment, but the times when a child seeks out each parent might be different. Like I said previously, our infant attachment styles follow us into adulthood, where they become our adult relational styles. These play a role in how we form and foster relationships throughout our adulthood life. So, secure child attachment leads to secure adult relational styles. This means an adult can give and receive care, negotiate their needs, and is independent or autonomous. The avoidant attachment style leads to dismissive adults, resulting in individuals who are emotionally closed off, not inclined towards physical affection, and often find objects to be more reliable than people. The ambivalent attachment style leads to entangled adults. These individuals may have anger and resentment towards their parents, or on the other end of the spectrum, may identify very closely with their parents. They may demonstrate intrusive behavior toward their own kids or other adults that they have relationships with. And finally, disorganized children lead to unresolved adults. Adults with this relational style typically experience dissociation or mentally checking out, emotional reactivity, and contradictory behaviors in their relationships. While we often take our childhood attachment style into adulthood, it's not to say that they're set in stone. You can put in the work to become earned secure despite having an insecure childhood attachment. The process of becoming earned secure involves inward reflection and honesty about how your childhood and your experiences are informing your current decisions. This journey is not a quick fix, but it is something that takes time to rebuild those secure habits. Enduring this journey leads to deeper connection and trust in your relationships with those in your life. So, I want to just briefly touch on adverse childhood experiences or ACEs. I'm really just going to scratch the surface with this. There's a lot of information out there. So, if you want to know more, there's plenty of research, plenty of videos that talk about this topic. But ACEs are traumatic events that occur during childhood or before the age of 17. There are 10 general ACE categories, including physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, alcohol or drug abuse by a parent, mentally ill parents, divorce, incarceration of a parent, and childhood domestic violence. A study showed that 3 out of 4 high school students report experiencing one or more ACE, and 1 out of 5 have four or more. The higher the ACE score indicates increased exposure to trauma and can lead to a higher risk of long-term health problems. So, why are ACEs important? Well, when a child experiences trauma, their body reacts by entering a state of stress. It releases all kinds of hormones that increase and put them in that fight or flight. When experiencing persistent trauma, a child's body will remain in a chronic stress response, which can be very harmful to their body. This can impact their development, physical and mental health, and behavioral outcomes. The effects of ACEs exposure as a child can last well into adulthood and can result in intergenerational transmission of adversity. This just means that there is a higher likelihood that these children who experience higher ACEs will then expose their children to ACEs, and then it becomes a perpetual cycle. As a parent, you cannot control everything, but there are some things that you can do to attempt to prevent exposure to trauma and reduce ACEs. The first is parental resilience. So, a parent's ability to adaptively respond to stress can impact their relationship with their child and promote positive relationships. Second, having a strong social support network can provide positive relationship experiences and reduce the risk of ACE exposure. The third is concrete support in times of need. This can mean social support, like we talked about in the second bullet, but it also means access to community resources, whether that's things like grocery stores or community programs, um, things like that. The fourth is knowledge of parenting and child development. The more a parent knows about child rearing, allows them to take the appropriate steps to promote their child's health. Finally, social and emotional competence of children helps them label and understand their different emotions so that they can build resiliency when facing stressful situations. So, like I said, occupational therapists focus on occupations. Occupations are things that we want or need to do in a day that take up our time and are meaningful to us. So, OTs can assist parents and their children to function in their daily roles and routines in ways such as educating on the development and progression of attachment, cue identification. So, this means like being able to tell when your baby's hungry or sad or angry, and then building that emotionally nurturing and consistent response to those cues to help build attachment. OTs can provide emotional regulation education. This is a range, they can provide this to children who are older, children who are younger. They can implement sensory strategies to promote emotional regulation, and they can help develop family-centered routines that promote bonding. So, if you're experiencing difficulty with completing your daily tasks, including taking care of yourself or your baby, this includes building that attachment with your baby. Discuss the need for rehab therapy with your doctor. This handout outlines everything that we talked about in today's session, and it will be available on the website, which I will have linked. You can also access it from this handout directly if you scan it now. In that middle QR code that takes you right to our website, at the top, there is going to be all the different topics that we're talking about. You should be able to go to attachment and find the slides, the link to a this pre-recorded session, and this handout. If you took that pre-survey, I would greatly appreciate that you take the post-survey as well so that I can compare the before and after session data. The bolded text on this slide here, that is the website. So if you didn't scan the QR code, you can pop that into your browser and it'll take you right to our website. This QR code is a list of Cheyenne, Wyoming local resources that might be beneficial to you. Next week, we'll be on infant and child development. These are my references that I use to create all the information that we talked about today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope that you tune in next week.